So good morning. I'm Kurt Edgerton, our pastor of church development, and Dr. Moody is on holiday with his family and will be back next week. So if you want to hear a real theologian, come back next week. That's the pitch line. So we're going to be looking at James chapter 3. If you're new to our faith family, we work verse by verse through biblical text. We don't skip anything, and it seems that in Dr. Moody's intellect, he manages to schedule vacations during difficult text. But today's not that day. So he left me, he did that to Nate last week, and I get a great text. All the text is great, but I get an easy text. How's that? We're going to be looking at the disciple in wisdom. So James chapter 3, verse 13. As the video said, if the voice sounds familiar, I was narrating my own video, which is the equivalency of writing your own author's page, which is basically defined narcissism. So wisdom is a word that's seemingly lost in our culture. We don't use it in common vocabulary. We don't very say it like in general dialect. And so I think it's important to somewhat define it. So I went and looked it up, right, Webster's dictionary, right, because I'm old enough to remember what a library is. And some of you, that's given away to Google, right? And then that's given away to, like Gemini or an AI or something. But if you look it up, Webster's will give you a pretty good definition, but it will refer you to an older word. And the word that it will refer you to, the study of words and where they come from is called etymology, if you're just into weird like facts and stuff, right? If you throw ology on the back of anything, it's the study of it. And so just so that you know, like theology, it's theos is God, ology, study of God. So, and that will become prevalent in a little while. But the etymology of this word that Webster will lead you to is the Greek word Sophia. And this word means wisdom. They define it as wisdom. And it's about 2,500, 2,700 years old, give or take a little bit. If you just stop there, you'd be content, but I'm never content. So we went a little further, and I jumped back into the Old Testament. And there's a Hebrew word, hakmah, which kind of sounds like Klingon. If you're a fan of Star Trek, I don't know if you can say it without sounding somewhat brutal, So, hakmah, but it's about 4,000 years old, so it's quite a bit older than the word Sophia. Interesting enough, these two words develop inside of two very different cultures. Etymology is really neat like that, so you can learn a lot about a culture, about how they use a word. The Sophia word develops inside of Greek culture. They end up with a discipline that they just love wisdom so much, they got to study it all the time. And so they end up with a discipline that they need to name. They put two words together, philos, which means love, and Sophia, which means wisdom. So we love wisdom so much, right? And we get the word philosophy from that. Now, if you're a student of philosophy, you would realize pretty quickly sitting in philosophy classes that it doesn't seem like everybody loves wisdom as much as they love sounding really smart. Right? So I remember the first time I walked into my first philosophy class, and I was like, if these people love wisdom, they have to love wisdom's author. I am a naive Christian, and I'm thinking they are all going to be believers. And I was the only Christ follower in that entire class, including the professor. It was a grand adventure, we'll just say that. But the word hakmah in Hebrew is used about 50 times in Ecclesiastes and about 18 times in Job. So this is a heavily used word. In the Hebrew mind, this word, hakmah, is very intrinsic to God. Like spark of life kind of thing. The knowledge comes only from God. Like that really deep thinking. Where the Greek mind, Sophia, would say it was maybe pursuit of knowledge, self-mastery. You see this really, really clear in Plato's allegory of the cave. We're not going to go into depth here because you wouldn't want to. It's very secularized. But what I can tell you is that Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle would highly affect our culture and our education system today in North America. That's where we get a lot of our self-help and self-motivation. I can do it myself, because their idea of philosophy, their love of wisdom, was a wisdom that could be self-developed. You would find it, you would refine it, you would grow in it, you'd have enough life experience, you'd connect it, you'd have an amalgamation, and when you mastered oneself, then Plato would say you'd become a philosopher king, and that you are now prepared to lead the naive people, right? It sounds less awesome now, right? Because it's way less awesome than it sounds, right? Plato was really great at flowering it up and selling it until it went into practice. And in Plato's mind and in his writing, it sounds so eloquent and so beautiful, but then in the hands of government and totalitarianism, it really went sideways, okay? Like really went sideways. And you might be like, why are we talking about languages and words? Well, because words matter. Where Hakma is a real all-encompassing, divine kind of concept. The early church fathers who are penning the New Testament under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit will take the word Sophia, the Greek idea of wisdom, and they will redeem it and somewhat baptize it. And in their mouth and in their writing, Sophia will turn into something completely different. Keeping in mind that most of these individuals come from the Hebrew tradition. So their idea of wisdom was from God. And so they kind of baptized the word Sophia. To such an extent, they use it 78 times in the New Testament. This is not a small subject or a small topic. And here's the thing. If you're like, but I'm not really one of those hyper-intellectuals, well, every one of you functions off a wisdom paradigm. Like every one of you in this room got up, got dressed, and came here based off of what? Your knowledge, understanding, and conviction. Now, some of you may be here out of a very core-centric conviction of your faith, and some of you may be here based off of family tradition, and some of you may be here because we had donut holes in the lobby. And I don't blame you for any of the above, because that's basically manna, but it's exceedingly unhealthy and bad for you. But I think manna, I can't imagine manna had that amount of cholesterol in it, you know? So as we get ready to dive in, what you need to know is that Sophia will be held in two hands, predominantly good, because they baptize it, but they also will use it in a negative sense. In one hand is a wisdom from God, which is good, and another hand is a wisdom from earthly wisdom. And he'll hold it like a magnet, right? And James does this incredible job of trying to walk us through what is wisdom, and how does it apply to our life. Now, keeping in mind, the book of James is predominantly written to church leaders. That does not give you the chance to check out. And let me tell you why. Do you have a child? Then you are leading someone. Do you have employees? Then you are leading someone. Are those employees under you? Then you're leading someone. Do you have a peer? You're leading someone. If you live in a cave by yourself in the middle of nowhere and never speak to another human being, or in a hermit for the rest of your life, maybe this doesn't apply to you. Also, don't do that. So, a bunch of monks tried to do that. It didn't really get theology anywhere. So, part of the Great Commission is go therefore, so kind of keep that in mind. So let's jump into James chapter 3, verse 13. He says, "Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show his good behavior, his deeds, and the gentleness of wisdom." So let's break this down. Who among you is Sophia? Who among you is wise? And this, we don't know yet if it's good or bad. Who among you is wise? So he's like, if you claim to be wise and understanding, that word in the Greek is epistemon. It's where we get epistemology. Again, ology, the study of. So it's the study of knowledge, which is kind of funny that you're studying knowledge while trying to know something. It does kind of have a cyclical humor to it. But let him show his good behavior, so it is good, his deeds, and the gentleness of wisdom. So when we hear good behavior in English as an American thinker, we are thinking an action. But if you look at it next to deeds, it shifts a little bit. See, good behavior is character. It's someone who is joyous, fun to be around. I don't mean like just comical, but they could go through a hard time and they don't lash out at you. They're the people that when you have a conflict, they will want to talk behind closed doors and they will be calm, right? They'll express goodness through their character and good deeds. And it's interesting that deeds is here. Why? Because James says, if I'll show you, you show me your faith, and I'll show you my faith by my works, right? So he's like, if you are wise, if you are Sophia, if you're godly from above, then you will what? You'll have good character and you will have good works. So you'll be doing something. There's automatically an implication here that godly wisdom from above does not involve filling one's mind with information and then warming a seat, right? It's not the Matrix. You're not meant to be a battery, right? Little warming element. You're supposed to do something with it. You can't. There's a concept, I think, in Western Christianity for the longest time that we paralleled education with sanctification. Like, as I said, we could fill our mind up with information of God and then do nothing with it. But the reality is, if you fill up your mind with the information of God, it should bridge the gap to your heart, and then you should do something about it. And he says, the gentleness of wisdom. Your translation may say meekness. This is another word that we've basically lost in our culture. Think about all your conversations. When was the last time you used the word meek? Like pretty much never, right? And why? Well, because we don't really want to be it. Because meekness is power under control. It is said that someone physically, like in a physical sense, that if you are meek, then you are capable of great violence or strength, but you choose not to. It's power under control. Every day we drive around power lines and we're near substations, and there's enough voltage in there that if you walked in with a metal rod, it would just arc straight to you and kill you, right? But they put a perimeter fence around it and insulation capacities and so forth, so it's power under control, right? So the goal is, so what is wisdom from above? Well, it's understanding. It has good behavior, it's good character. It has good deeds. It's also meek. It's choosing to not use force unnecessary. And this is really important. So look at your first blank. It says the wisdom from God is expressed through understanding, depth of character, good deeds, and meekness. So wisdom from God is expressed through understanding, depth of character, good deeds, and meekness. So if you're wondering, where does my wisdom come from? If you can check these boxes, you're probably doing okay. Also, fair warning up front, there's very little 100% on this side of heaven. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know, like if you think you've mastered this, you probably haven't. If you're judging yourself saying, I barely meet this mark or I meet it sometimes, welcome to being human, right? This is a broken place of broken people, a bunch of sinners coming together to admit they're sinners and to love Jesus Christ. So you're not going to be 100% mark. So let's look at 14. It says, but if you have bitter jealousy, selfish ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. It says, but if you have bitter jealousy, welcome to another word that we have almost completely lost in our culture. We almost never use the word jealousy anymore because it makes you petty, right? But here's the thing. Jealousy is present in all of our hearts, and I think we just need to define what it is. It is not envy. Let me explain the difference. Envy, let's say that you don't have a great car, that your car is kind of in rough shape, it doesn't run very well, it doesn't look great. It gets you A to B, gets the job done, you know. It's that Honda Civic that's like 285 billion miles on it, but still runs somehow. You've all had that car. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like it's had a low-end knock for like since Jesus was here last time, and you don't know how it hasn't changed its own oil yet, but it just keeps driving. You feed it as much oil as you feed it gas, you know, that kind of concept. You're driving that car, and you look over and your friend or your neighbor has like this really great car. Envy is wanting a car like their car. You envy their car. You don't mind that they have it. You just would also like to have it, right? Jealousy is so much worse. Jealousy is wanting their car and hoping they had your car. Jealousy is, I'm going to steal their car. Jealousy is Grand Theft Auto, right? Jealousy is like, I want their car and I want them to not have a car. I want their car and I want them to have a bicycle with a flat tire, right? This is not a good heart posture. So it says jealousy. Selfish ambition. What's selfish ambition? Interesting enough that it has to say selfish ambition because there's an ambition that is not as selfish. I say not as selfish because everything we do on this side of heaven's a little right? But there's an ambition that's less selfish. I'll prove it to you. James and John go to Jesus and they say, let us sit at your right and left hand in heaven. And Jesus' response is, you have no idea what you're asking for. Because they had no idea what they were asking for. But it doesn't get on to them for the ambition of asking. If your ambitions in your life right now are that I want to love the Lord of God with all my heart, my soul, my mind, and strength, and love my neighbor as myself, man, keep riding that ambition. Keep riding that ambition, right? If your ambition is I feel like God's given me something and I want to share it with people and I don't want to be selfish about it, and I don't care if they even know I did it, keep riding that ambition. But this is selfish ambition. So what is selfish ambition? It's stepping on other people. You've all worked with one of these people, and if you haven't, you're the person in that workspace, right? This is the person that's always backbiting, brown-nosing, workarounds. They are the person that can always manage to get the weekend off when you can't. They lie, cheat, steal, whatever it takes. Selfish ambition, self-motivation in your heart. Do not be arrogant, and so lie against the truth. If you have these things, stop lying against the truth. If these things are expressed in your life more often than not, then stop lying that you have divine wisdom. That's what he's basically saying. I know it's a little rough. This wisdom is not which comes down from above. So it's not from above, it's not from God, but it's earthly, natural, and demonic. It's earthly. If you remember when we were a kid and we thought, I want to grow up and I want to be an adult and it's going to be so great, right? Why do we believe that? Like, if you are a homeowner, right? Like, I'm going to get this house. It's going to make life so good. I'm going to have people over all the time. And all you ever do as an adult is work on your house. Like, it could be a brand new turn. We have some great contractors in our faith family. They do phenomenal work. I mean, some straight up artisan craftsmanship. But they could hand you the keys to that turnkey home, and like in 3 weeks, you're going to be doing something. The law of entropy, you know what I'm saying? Thermodynamics, just not awesome, right? Everything's in a state of decay. And, you know, so it feels like I was working on my house yesterday, which I enjoy, but it feels like you can never win. You know, it feels like it's this endless cycle that you're always chasing. So it's earthly, it's temporal. This kind of wisdom is temporal. It's pursuing that car that you are jealous, you want it, and your neighbor can have the bicycle with a flat in it. And the irony is that car will start rusting the day you get it, right? That car that you love so much, sooner or later you're going to throw something in the back seat and not even think about it. It is also natural. It is natural, it's fallen, it's instinctual. Remember I said there's no 100% of something on this side of heaven. There's something broken inside each of us at the fall. The serpent said, and you will be like God, and we are still on that pursuit to this day. And you are here, hopefully, because you're like, I don't want to be like God, I just want God. I think, honestly, divine wisdom is the realization that I don't have a clue, and I want Jesus. It is also, it's real hard to get past this last word, by the way. We can feel pretty okay with earthly, we can feel kind of okay with natural. Look at that word. Demonic. If you're a follower of Christ and you like this word, please see me afterwards. We need to have a conversation. You know, if there's like pentagrams, no, I'm just kidding. But like, so if you like this word, that's bad. It means it's rebellious, it's malicious. I think of Cain looking at Abel. If you're looking to put some skin to this, right? Some narrative, some illustration, some texture. You know, Cain gives a sacrifice that he knows he's not supposed to give. God gets on to him, encourages him, tells him, even warns him what's going to happen if you don't do what you're supposed to do, if you don't submit. And Cain is jealous of his brother. He has selfish ambition. He wants to be number one in God's eyes. He believes himself to be wise. He acts naturally. He is earthly wisdom, and he does something demonic. What does he do? He takes a rock and he kills his brother. I think of the Tower of Babel. There's a new technology in town. Fired bricks, kiln-fired bricks, right? And they're building cities taller and higher. They're somewhat in the Bronze Age, probably. And they are boasting about their technology and their abilities and their building capacities. I don't know any culture right now that's boasting about how smart they are, right? I know that you don't live in that, right? I don't open the newspaper or Google every day and there's like some new AI talking about how awesome it is, right? I don't have two of them in my house running right now, I promise you, right? We live in this. I think of David on the roof when he should have been at war, leading his men and also being led by his men, right? He leaves his accountability. Then he looks down and he sees and he wants. I think of that. He's working this jealousy, self-ambition, earthly thinking, natural, demonic. It plays out like a scenario. Like you can almost start the script and watch it run. I think of Peter. He's running those of you that are engineers, Peter denies Jesus. And I often think that if he was an engineer, he's running a risk analysis, right? The variables are in play. Jesus is there, and they're like, do you know Jesus? And they're like, he's one of his disciples. Like, I don't know that guy. Because he's run a risk analysis. He's worked the formula in his head, and he's like, if I say I know him, I'm probably going to end up next to him. And he denies Jesus not once, not twice, but 3 times. This is difficult but true. This is what earthly wisdom looks like. It is us playing chess matches, running the variables and the equations. Recently met with a pastor, and he asked, what if you could do anything over in your life? And I was like, I think I would start being reckless and younger. He's like, isn't being reckless youth? And I was like, no, I mean like reckless in the sense of just doing what the Bible told me to do. He's like, that's not reckless. I was like, it is when all you ever do is think about random variables and equations and chess and how things work and random interactions and risk analysis. Because God calls us to some pretty risky things sometimes. Verse 16, it says, for where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every evil thing. So in the previous verse 14, he tells us where it comes from. Where does it come from? Earth, natural, demonic, right? Where's its source? But in 16, he tells us what it gives us, what happens to us. Because he says, for where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every evil thing. So disorder is chaos. Left to my own devices, my house would look like an Airbnb that no one lived in, right? Because I have some little bit of obsessive compulsive tendencies. I am a big fan of wash dish, put in space, right? Like you don't leave dirt, like I've got issues, right? Like when we decorate here for Christmas, they only let me like take things out because like I'm trying to get like the laser level out and stuff and like, yeah, they're like, that looks so horrible. I'm like, yeah, but it's symmetrical, right? Because I can't stand chaos. Well, my wife's an artist, and she doesn't love chaos per se, but she's like into organic serendipity, right? So she actually lives in our house. Where like, if I lived in our house, they'd be like, I'm trying to make the FBI believe I don't live in our house, right? Like leave no trace, like I'm trying to backpack through my own home, right? Like leave no trace, you know? Like was someone here? I don't know, right? You could bounce a quarter off the bed. Like that's kind of the space that I want to live in. That is not the space that she is going to live in. And I love my wife, so that's not the space I'm going to live in. She'll be at the next service. We might be leaving that part out. But I think of chaos, and it says that it leads our life to chaos. Every now and again, and please keep doing this, by the way, because I love it. Please. One of our men from our faith family will call me and be like, man, life's just upside down right now. Do you think you could meet? And I'm like, yes. And it generally goes one of two extreme ways. One of them's like, hey, what's the shortcut out of this? Right? And I'm like, red pill or blue pill? No, I'm just thinking like, and then the other one is like, hey, what can I do in my life to really change this? And there's no shortcut to sanctification, is what it really comes down to. There's no shortcut to grow in our knowledge of Christ. And in this, I kind of leaned to Paul. You know, Paul kind of gives us a bit of his resume here. Acts 22:3, it says he's a Jew born in Tarsus. He said he studied under the greatest rabbi there was. We still actually read some of this guy's teachings. Philippians 3 says, Jew of Jew, tribe of Benjamin, Hebrew of Hebrew, Pharisee as to righteousness, which is the law, found blameless as to zeal, and persecutor of the church. He gives his resume of all the incredible things he's done and the things he's learned. He has collected all knowledge to his. He is, by the way, the only biblical writer that I'm aware of that the biblical text tells us studied both the Jewish idea of wisdom and the Greek idea of wisdom, and held both of them like a magnet, which, by the way, they will not touch, right? They're opposite to one another in so many ways. But his zeal, all of this, where did it get him? Persecuting the church, pursuing chaos. And what I would say is that an unfocused intellect leads to arrogance. An unrefined experience leads to pragmatism. And without purpose, such wisdoms are poison. Your blanket's earthly wisdom is self-focused and causes disorder and chaos. Let me share a little bit about my personal life very briefly. I left the church and corporate worship for about 7.5 to 8 years. I was very discontent and very upset and very angry, and I decided I would work the equation without y'all. I would figure it out without the church. I would just hold the Bible and Jesus and just do it on my own. And I began, as a student of philosophy, to try to work an equation for a purposeful life. And it was journal after journal after journal, and I've gone back and read them, and they sound completely absurd now. But to such an extent that I went into my boss's office and I said, hey, I need to quit. Great job, great family, house paid for, everything's great. I have nothing to complain about. And he said, what? And I'm shaking like a leaf because he's a good friend, and I love the family. And I was like, I need to go. I have to do something. He said, what do you need to do? I was like, I'm trying to solve this equation and I don't have enough variables. He's like, well, Kurt, you just jumped out of a plane like 4 times last week. I'm skydiving and bungee jumping and kayaking and rock climbing and flying to Colorado and snowshoeing through blizzards. And he's like, what else do you need? I was like, I don't know. I just need something. And I was convinced that on this crazy trip that like somehow I'd be on a mountain and Jesus would meet me in the transfiguration and give me like some golden tablets, which sounds like a cult, okay? Like every cult that I know of, to be entirely honest. And on that trip, I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable, and I couldn't understand it. And my wife had planned part of the trek, and she'd put us on one of these roads that was like destined to die. Like this is a Jeep road, not meant for a truck, not meant for a big van camper kind of thing, you know. So once we didn't die on the other side of that road, I berated her to no end and tore her down and hollered at her, and she cried and ran away, and I thought, this is not who I want to be. Why can't I be who I want to be? Why can't I find this purposeful life? And I was in a national park and I was shaving and I looked in the mirror and I thought, you have changed every variable in your life. Every variable in life. What is still wrong? And I realized I'm still wrong. That I am where I am and I am who I am. And that there was no solution to that equation outside of corporate worship and being close to Christ. And so I want you to kind of hold that in your head as we continue in 17. It says, but the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering without hypocrisy. Let's look at that. It says, but the Sophia, the wisdom from above. So it says it's from God. This wisdom from God is first. The Hebrew word's proton. Matthew 6:33, you seek first the kingdom of God. That's proton. So get it in the right order is what he's saying. So if you get it first, if it's first pure, right? Look at that. If it's first pure. Now, mind you, in our heart, it's not going to be pure because we're kind of a mess, but it's pure with God. If it's first pure, then it will be, equal sign, it will be then what? Peaceable, gentle, reasonable, and full of mercy. And I think you could move these around any way you wanted to and it would still work. It could be reasonable, and if it's reasonable, it'll be gentle, you know. But he says, and good fruits. This again is an action, a behavior. In the New Testament, when you see this Greek word for fruits, if you see the word fruits in English in the New Testament, 2/3 of the time, 45 times, it is not being used as an apple or an orange or a grape, like an actual fruit in the grocery store and produce. It's being used as an illustration, an example, or a parable of good living. It's a behavior. And it says unwavering without hypocrisy, that it is unchanging and it's not duplistic. You think about Paul's conversion, right? He's on his road to Damascus. He has a small army with him. I think we often think he's by himself. Like, that's not true. He has a small army with him. They're going to persecute the church and likely kill them. He's on the road to Damascus, and he's struck to the ground by a bright light. He's inevitably blinded. And from heaven, he hears, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? This is in Acts 9, 3-9. And he responds, who are you, Lord? And the response is, I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. Such a quick conversion. So all of this knowledge in his head, all this religious history, all of this thought processes, all of this different wisdom suddenly gets siphoned through and gradually purified, and he ends up writing 1/3 of the New Testament. So the one who would persecute the church ends up becoming one of its greatest preachers and prophets and purveyor of biblical text. Philippians 3:8, this is continuing the last, where he had said how great all these achievements were. He says, then I count all of these things as loss. In 1 Thessalonians 2:8, he would mention that he had been with this church in Thessalonica, and he counted it as a privilege to invest his life in them. Not to persecute them, not to kill them for their faith, but to invest his life in them. Your blank here, your third blank, is wisdom from God expressed through Christ-like character and behaviors. Christ-like character and behaviors. Verse 18, it says, and the seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Again, we kind of have a fruit reference here as a seed. He says the seed, right, the seed of wisdom whose fruit is righteousness, that the fruit of this sort of divine wisdom, wisdom from above, this fruit is righteousness, is sown in peace. And who makes peace? I would be honest with you and say that most of my life has not been defined by peace. It's been defined by adversity and frustration, anguish and anger. It's probably not until like the last 3 to 4 years that I can say I got kind of a peacefulness. I was in love with the idea, some of you have heard me say this, I was in love with the idea of the Jesus who flipped tables. The issue with that is he only does it max 2 times in an entire ministry. And it's against religious leaders, who have started using the court of evangelism as a circus for all practical purposes. And that's the only 2 times we see this table flipping Jesus. And the rest of the time it's let the little children come to me. The rest of the time it's meeting Nicodemus in a private space. The rest of the time it's a woman at the well. He's breaking social barriers and loving people all over the place. Not table flipping Jesus. And I had this image of table flipping Jesus, and I loved the idea of being like righteous anger, like a warrior for the kingdom, that kind of ridiculousness. But it says here that this sort of wisdom from God is a seed whose fruit is righteousness is sown in peace by those who, what? Make peace. Those who make peace. So your blank is wisdom from God is from peace and creates peace. As I was preparing this, I was thinking about these famous people that you would know their names who had achieved all that the world had to offer to some extent. Robin Williams, not only hilarious as an actor and writer, but was known for visiting people. All these accounts come out of his funeral and afterwards of people who were in depressed states or struggles, and he would visit them and get them to laugh and remind them the joy of life. Robin Williams takes his own life. Anthony Bourdain would write a lot about food and culture. Like he had some profanities, but like his writing was really in depth. He probably traveled more than any person that I'm aware of. Like he met presidents, and I think he hung out with Bono more than Bono hung out with Bono. And he, just such an incredible writer and author, lover of music and food and cultures and people. And he as well kind of comes to the end and can't find purpose and takes his own life. Kurt Cobain, Marilyn Monroe, Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway, of all people, was accounted many times of saying that he couldn't stand to be in a room with himself. He was asked why he drank so much. This guy consumed so much alcohol. You'll find tons and tons of bars named Ernest Hemingway, the Hemingway, because he drank so much. And he was asked, why do you drink so much? And he says, I can't stand to be in a room with myself, because he couldn't find purpose in all that he had collected. He ends up taking his own life. Great regrets, Howard Hughes changes technology, aviation. He's the Elon Musk of a different generation. He ends up living as a recluse, almost a hermit in his own tower, regretting the understanding and the knowledges that he had collected. Leo Tolstoy. Some of you are like, who? And some of you are like, oh, I can see, right? He wrote War and Peace. Leo Tolstoy was an incredible author and thinker. He had achieved almost everything there was to achieve. Wealth, success. Everyone wanted to have him come in and lecture. Everybody wanted to know his views on things. Kings and presidents wanted to sit down with this individual. And Leo Tolstoy has said in his short biography called The Confession that he would walk his estate, his big garden estate, with a rope on his left shoulder, contemplating if this was the day that he would take his life, because he could not find purpose in all the knowledge that he had collected. And here's the thing I would like to tell you. The reason why is because biblical knowledge, when you refine it all down, if you get so much of it, if you work so many of these equations, they all just have an equal sign and nothing. What next? What next? What next? Because true wisdom has an author, and his name is Jesus. I was very confused with taking my first few philosophy classes because I thought if someone loved wisdom, they must love wisdom's author. So it's very confusing to be the only believer in the class. Because if you love wisdom, you love wisdom's author. Wisdom is Jesus. I want you to get something deeply and walk out with it. If your life is defined by chaos and brokenness, and I don't mean like someone's sick. You can't control that. But if your internal narrative, your internal person's just a hurricane, a forest fire, if that's you, you need to stop and ask one of two things. You're either far from God or you do not know him personally. So I'm going to ask you to stand with me, please. Hear this. If you're either or, I'm going to pray, and I'd like for you to pray with me. God, I thank you for your word, for your wisdom, for your purity and goodness. God, I ask that if there are those here, like I was, that are so far from you, and God, to be fair, sometimes still are far from you. Can we ever say we're truly close with our defiant hearts? But God, for those that are so far from you and consumed by chaos, God, may they right now pray to be near to you, to submit to you, and begin the process of doing so. May they ask for accountability. Maybe they ask to be discipled, whatever the case may be. God, if they're your children, let them know that, like the prodigal son, you are the father who will run out and greet them at the road, no matter how despondent or how disobedient they have been. God, if they're here today and they don't know you, they just literally do not know you. Maybe they know religion, maybe they know names and terms, terminology, but God, they don't know you personally. God, I pray that they would acknowledge the sovereignty of Jesus Christ, they would acknowledge his lordship, and they would submit their life to him and accept the free gift of salvation. God, I thank you for who you are. I thank you for your word. And God, honestly, I thank you just infinitely for the peace. And God, I pray that in our lives as those who follow you, we would plant peace and reap peace. And I'm sorry, God, personally, just confessing for the times that I have been strife and jealousy and selfish ambition. And I pray that we leave here and pursue you. In Jesus' name I pray.